Hi there, and welcome to the Sheroes Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Renee Sparks, and this is Series 2, Women in Media. Today, I am joined by a phenomenal woman, none other than Kanyisa Booi. I need to read this properly, so please give me a minute because you need your moment. You need your flowers. Kanyisa Booi is a dynamic founder and campaign manager at Health Communications Africa. She's a trailblazing advocate, seamlessly blending human rights, community development, and the transformative power of pleasure-centric indigenous wellness practices. I mean, really? I need to pause there. We have to speak about all of this.
Yes.
With a distinct focus on sexual and reproductive justice, addressing gender and domestic violence. Kanyisa has spearheaded impactful content and campaigns for NGOs, collaborating with influential organizations like Africa Unite, Activate Change Driver, Marie Stopes, and Global Health Strategies, just to name a few. In addition to her pioneering work, Kanyisa is the visionary force behind Eve's Apple, the mag. Now, I mean, really, again, another pause, because that I am obsessed with. A groundbreaking digital sexual and reproductive health magazine. And if you haven't seen it yet, please go and look it up and make sure that you are following. This innovative platform goes beyond traditional boundaries, striving to ensure access to verifiable, uncensored, bold, and pleasure-inclusive sexual reproductive health information by infusing indigenous wellness practices and celebrating the joy of pleasure. Eve's Apple, the mag transforms health communication, and this is a fact. So I'm really begging, go and have a look. Kanyisa passionately believes that the evolution of this communication is not only critical, but should be memorable, reaching every corner of society it aims to empower. Now, this woman literally said to me, oh, trim down what you need to. There's no way, huh? Like, you are so flowery and, poetic with your words. I needed to read more. So there we go. Welcome, Kanyisa.
Thank you so much, Renee. And thank you so much for the work that you do as well, because sometimes we don't know the impact of the work. And when we get pulled in to have these conversations, it's only then you're like, actually, I'm a bit of a big deal.
No, you are. You absolutely are. I'm glad you can see that. Yes, you are our Shero. I want to kick off with, what drew you to the communications and advocacy space?
So initially, I was working in the leadership development space. And when you do community work in the leadership development space, you can see the little gaps, gaping wounds, really. And then when I saw those gaps, I started being very emphatic around campaign work. So in the organizations I worked for before, they allowed me to segue into campaign development. And within campaign development, you realize that messaging is such a critical thing that cannot be glossed over, or just like, you can't do it the same way for one as you have for the other. And as a direct result of that, I moved squarely into health communications. And because I had been very focused in abortion access, I then moved very squarely into sexual and reproductive health, and then eventually just sexual health. Because honestly, I am such as a reproductive justice activist that I wanted to be clear where some of our issues start, and even before the issues start, do the work of promoting healthy behaviors and pleasure.
So this brings me to my next discussion point. I mean, I've seen you go live. I've listened to you endlessly speak about pleasure.
Yes.
What is it that kind of keeps us from having these discussions, and how should we actually be bridging that gap? Because we can speak about intergenerational or generational gaps. We can speak about culture. We can speak about all of that. But how do you think we could take what you're doing with Eve's Apple and the work you're doing around campaigning for pleasure and joy? How do we actually, and we know it's not just sexual pleasure, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, how do we start shaping that narrative?
I think we have to firstly acknowledge that for a very long time, we haven't believed pleasure to be our birthright. In fact, pleasure is a human right. And so cultivating a lifestyle of pleasure requires you to find out from the little to the most things, what gives you little bits and pieces of joy. So that cup of tea or cup of coffee in the morning. Do you like your room well lit? Are you an afternoon sun kind of person? Do you like watching the moon? Does seeing the moon crescent give you a little bit? So then there's little things that you experience that might seem insignificant. Being able to note those pieces allows you to give yourself permission to experience pleasure. And so for me, there's the concept of microdosing pleasure. Like someone will be talking about what it feels like when you're using a cotton bud in your ear, that little bit tingling feeling. Being able to acknowledge that that's a pleasurable experience means that you awaken that within yourself that lets you know what are the things that I enjoy doing the most. So I'm very much a cup of coffee. My room is always well lit. I generally don't close my curtains to be dark because I want to see the morning sun. Like I'm that person. And by the time it gets to sexual pleasure, you've given yourself little moments and on every day really of pleasurable experiences.
That's amazing. So, I mean, lots of people wouldn't think about pleasure in the way that you just did. I mean, a simple cup of coffee. Like you're making me think now, how many moments did I miss by not taking time to be intentional about, well, actually, this I'm going to enjoy in this way. And I think we're living in such a pace, right? That we do gloss over these moments. We do think, oh, okay, it's just another thing that I have to do to get to this other thing. But in actual fact, there's actually something that I really enjoy when I look at your statuses. You always post life means well. Yes. And I'm like, okay, I need to sit and understand what, is it something that you're posting as an intention for yourself to be kind of cognizant of this moment that has taken place? Or because I see you post things like a sunset, you're constantly posting those. So those your kind of intentional practices?
Yes, very much that. I think one of the greatest things about being on earth is being able to learn from other people. And in fact, the life means well. I heard someone else say this, and they were going through stuff and they were like, what helps me is realizing that, this is not against me. This is not a universal experience, conspiracy against me. It's the knowledge that life, in fact, does mean well for me. And so I picked that up and I was like, you know what? Even on the days where I'm struggling or on the days when the sun is shining the brightest, I need to let it settle within myself that no matter the weather, no matter what's going on, life does mean well. And sometimes when I say it, I'm just in the dumps. I'm in the gutter. It's rough. But I have to, as a practice, I have to remind myself that this is but a phase. It's not, there's no permanence. And actually sometimes it's just one aspect of life that's not going well and not everything. And the sunsets and the morning coffee and the moon, for me, those things are remembering that the day was good, and being able to pinpoint things that have been good about the day that are not, that sometimes are outside of my control. But also because the day is never just always the entire day was bad. There were good things that are happening to me. So reminding myself as well, just again that, there's living to be done, like a little bit of sunshine set, the embers, or like a moon crescent just outside the window, or like listening to in my room, listening to my children just giggling on the other side. It's just a remembrance that there's joy in the smallest little tiniest ways that seem insignificant.
Oh my word. Imagine if all of us just started thinking about it in that way. I mean, it could be very, very powerful, because very often we fixate on the negative. And then that, like you say, I mean, I can imagine it's just one little pebble in my shoe, that it was really minute. And then it becomes what my day is about. And everyone I encounter, I'm speaking those words, which is then reinforcing the negativity. So fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I wanted to understand, I mean, you've got Eve's Apple, the mag, and in it, you're very brave. It's very vibrant. It allows us to engage with queer joy and queer pleasure, and just in general, looking at, I mean, I've had this conversation with you. I look at the pictures of yourself even in some of the clothing, and I'm like, I want that, because you just showcase such a lot of confidence. And I suppose, like you say, with your message around life means well, sometimes it's not that I'm feeling in that space, but I'm showing up like that so that I can also then embody that for someone else. So, I mean, how do you even begin to start shaping your content around Eve's Apple? Because I'm sure you're constantly having to find something else, right? Or do you use what's currently going on in social media, or something that you've heard? Like, what kind of inspires those articles or stories?
So the story behind Eve's Apple is that it started during COVID, like in the thicket of COVID. And I was without work and I needed something to kind of pour into. And at the time, oddly enough, Cosmo had said that they're leaving the country. Yeah. And I was just like, I have all this information. What if I became the new Cosmo? Bit of audacity never hurt anybody. And so in thinking about the content that goes into their magazine, truly is around what is a beautiful piece of content that you experience that you never forget, right? And part of my growing up, access and in access, was those little moments where I could go to the library and there were some pieces of Cosmopolitan that existed that the librarian would have thought are not too bad for us to see. And I thought, Lord, it's so beautiful, so beautifully packaged. Of course, I couldn't find myself in the magazine. And also some of the stuff that was in the magazine, I felt politically was a bit damaging. And so it's a consistent and continuous reimagining of what a useful piece of information is, but also what a beautiful piece of information looks like as well. So something that someone not only reads, but also experiences for themselves. And the insistent narrative around our own beauty, like being in our own skin, being alive at this time is complex enough, but trying to figure out how you can support a dignified experience and information experience for someone really is at the center of the imagining of the magazine.
Yeah. So that is very clear, because when I speak to you about, the images you can see, you've taken your time to curate, you've taken your time to make sure that it's not derogatory. There's nothing, if I look at it, it's beautiful. This person appears in their beauty. It's not at all like, oh my word, could you not have found someone else, whatever. There's actually not one single image that you look at and you go, okay, Kanyisa, what were you thinking?
What was the plan?
Not at all. Exactly. Yeah. So well done on getting that right.
Thank
because
you.
I mean, I say this all the time. I keep saying I'm a visual person. We're all visual people, right? I mean, whatever you've imagined, you are seeing, whether it's with your eyes or in your imagination. So, I mean, when you give something like that, that gives me, I mean, I love the vibrancy and the color. So for me, that's already like, oh, I'm here. So yeah, well done on that. I wanted to also understand, how do you then, through all the spaces that you engage in, and I mean, I know you also a Global Atlantic Fellow, you're based at Decano, that's how we connect, but how do you intentionally create spaces for women and for gender non-conforming or queer folk within the spaces that you kind of enter or spend time in?
I think womenness and queerness can be identities that can carry around a lot of pain and just heaviness because of how deeply politicized our bodies are. And so my focus really is around, how do we express joy? How are we joyful in the spaces that we're in? And And how do we share that with each other? And more often than not, because we are oppressed, then there is, as you say, a vibrance and color that isn't necessarily found anywhere else. And so I'm very steeped in looking at, consciously insisting, finding those joyful expressions. So if it's music, if it is in conversation, if it's in expression, I'm hoping that I'll be able to share a new language project with you where we're talking about affirming language, in being able to create things for ourselves. And for me, I don't know if there is such a thing as a safe space. What I do believe in is that there is joy to be experienced and shared with each other. And so I focus a lot on those joyful experiences. It's a pity you're not in Gauteng, because you could come to a Chardonnay garden, All Senses Chardonnay garden, on the 25th of November. And that's the creation of joyful spaces and themes, and you can show up and be beautiful and eat and laugh, and there's no outcomes expected from that experience, purely just being joyful with those groups of people in that moment for that time.
That's fantastic. Oh my word, that is like the ultimate dream, right? So there's no performance, no you need to meet X, Y, and Z before Okay, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
None of it. And I think being in community with each other, whether, because I'm a queer woman, being with other women, being with queer folk, being with gender non-conforming folk, being with trans folk, being in community with each other is such a brilliant experience. And it's so saddening for me that the world chooses not to be part of that and tries to change that, because what a wonderful thing to be experiencing difference. What a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Absolutely. I think, we had just recently come from a convening in Mexico, and that was just exactly what you're saying. Like all these absolutely amazing human beings, bottom line. Human beings. I don't care where you're from or what you identify as, but just these incredible spirits and souls, right? Like we connected on so many more levels, and it was just beautiful. So I totally hear you. Lastly, in the communications and media space, it can be quite a harsh environment, right? I just wanted to know from you, for anyone who is considering pursuing a career similar to what you've done, what advice would you give them, or what do you think they need to know from the onset?
I think it's an audacious thing to want to do, to imagine your capacity to be able to communicate with people in various ways. And I think that stand in that knowledge that you have that kind of audacity in the first place. And then secondly, understand that it takes time to build networks. I've been in the industry for a really long time. The magazine's been in the running for the past 3 years, and we're still babies. With learnings, we're changing. Times are changing, language is changing. And so I think for me, just be gentle with your journey and know that it is yours and it doesn't take the same shape as anyone else's. And again, be in community with people that you do work with. We lean a lot on the communities with whom we write with and with whom we write for, because we don't speak on behalf of anyone. It is not voice of the voiceless. We don't do that. We are in collaboration and we're part of the communities that we work with. And so I think that's really, really important. And also, as a South African person, I think I really believe that other African countries and people in the diaspora are looking and seeking us out to figure out how they can support our work and they can be part of that work. And so again, find your mates for the journey and know that they will change. And sometimes you'll have strange bedfellows, But as long as you're clear about your politics and what you intend on achieving, then you're okay. You're doing well. And that's the only thing you need to remember consistently. You're okay, you're doing well because you've chosen this journey and you are clear about the direction with which you want to go.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. There is a lot of wisdom. I think even for people thinking about any other activities within advocacy, it's very useful for us to start thinking like that. Who do we have with us, knowing that they won't always be with us, but it's part of our journey. And I think I love that. Be gentle with yourself, allow yourself to experience the journey. Thank you so much, Kanyisa, for sharing your wisdom and for just being as audacious as you are, and really showcasing leadership and being present. I think what we didn't, obviously in this short discussion, people can't hear, but I just want to share. I've sat in a room with many people, but to have you get up in one of the rooms and kind of summarize things in such a beautiful way that people understood, it speaks volumes to your journey in communications and communications for communities and people who don't speak in jargon, so that was really, really powerful. I've been in spaces where you've kind of synthesized this thing that we were all sitting going, what is this person saying? So yeah, you've chosen the right path, and we all look to you and hope to see Eve's Apple kind of grow and become even bigger and become the cosmopolitan that you'd like it to be. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Renee. And I also just want to give you your flowers. Thank you for the reminder of who we are in this value chain called life and in the advocacy work that we do. It's not a small thing, it's a major thing to be on your platform and to, talk about myself and the journey. And also to share pieces of myself in a space where honestly just affirming me as a human being. So this is beautiful work, and I just also think it's important for me to say thank you. And I hope that you get more people and they can share pieces of themselves with us as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, and it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks.